Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly show where I get to learn a little bit more about somebody else's perspective on movies. And I have the pleasure of having one of my, I guess, friends through Slack at this point from SiftPop,
Right?
Patrice Downing, who this is actually the first time we're talking face to face, but we certainly communicate a lot through our Slack chat and everything. But Patrice, thank you so much for coming on and chatting movies with me.
I'm really excited to be here. It's very cool to get to talk in real life and not just through Slack.
And that's a loose definition of real life now because that's what this world is like. So
I know,
it's
right? The fact that it's normal to call this real life is a little concerning.
that's the world we live in. But I won't get on
Right.
any paranoid tangents about technology because then we'll be here for five
No.
hours. But before we dive into the questions that I always like to ask for our first round interview here, Patrice, would you like to shamelessly plug where people could find some of your work or anything like that?
You can catch me on SiftPop pretty regularly. I'm in the BC pretty much every week. I've got the monthly Fact on Fiction, which is my absolute favorite thing to write. And if you haven't checked that out, the first paragraph is always my favorite. Wild facts on things that have nothing to do with a movie.
Well, there
But
you
I'm also
go.
on Serialized and Letterboxd Teely Fox Talks.
Yeah, it's at the point where it's just like, are you really a fan of movies if you don't have a letterbox?
I know, right? It's like I'm not feeling pressure to be on Letterboxd, but I guess I kind of have to because if it's not right, every time someone asks about a movie, well, how many stars did you rate? I'm like, I don't know. I don't have it on a list. You don't have a list?
You
I
know
guess I should start one.
what's funny is I think I'm gonna upset some people with an article I'm gonna write for guyatthemovies.com probably next week. Because I feel like sometimes we have to take a step back and really rethink how we critique film. And does a movie really need to be whittled down to a number or stuff
Right.
like that? But that's a whole other conversation.
For
But
sure. But I am happy Sif Pop changed to the like it, love it kind of scale over a number. That made me so happy to be able to just say, yes, I'm not putting a number on this, but I like it. It
yeah,
made it a lot more comfortable to write reviews.
I've done my YouTube channel since 2016, and I think the best decision I ever made with my YouTube channel was getting rid of grades on my videos, and I did that like 5 years ago.
That's
And
awesome.
it
Yeah.
just, you know, listen to my thoughts. If this sounds like
Right.
something would interest you, watch it. If it's not,
Exactly.
then don't watch it. Or feel comfortable attacking me in the comments because that's always fun too.
Right.
But Patrice, I always like to ask this question first because, some people have a really straight answer. Other people hate me. But what is your favorite film?
So yeah, it's a hard one. Like one movie that's your favorite, but I definitely would have to go with kind of a trio of Cary Grant as my
Okay.
favorite. Because Bringing Up Baby is what I always just say as my favorite movie because it really is one I can watch anytime. I love the back and forth with him and Katharine Hepburn. I love the leopard. I love the dog. I love the dialogue. I just love the absurdity of getting in the wrong car and being mad that it's not starting or getting mad at the person that's like, hey, get out of my car. It's like, it's not your car, it's my car, David. And it's like, no, that's mine. Like everything. Like going to buy a bunch of meat for a leopard and people asking why you're buying meat and having a problem telling them what everything. I just love it. I love it so much. But I also, Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House is another Cary Grant movie that I feel like not enough people have seen. And it
I have
inspired so many other movies. It's the Money Pit, basically,
mm,
40 years earlier. But so great. But, he buys this house that's a dump
mm,
and just pours money into it. They basically level it and start over. But his wife and daughters just make everything so much more difficult for him. And he's just trying to build a better life for his family. And everyone's acting like he's the problem. And it's like, no, I just want to live in the country so my family can live here. But now I've got to get on a train an hour earlier to go to work because the schedule was 2 years old when we bought the house and I didn't know a train didn't run. And the price of the house keeps going up over silly things like the wife seeing some broken slate on the ground and asking the contractor to put it in, which then goes this escalating series of contractors involved to make the floor drain and vent and all this stuff to where the house just costs like 10% more to build over a 5-foot square of tile. Like I just and I love his reactions to everything and the physical comedy. I could watch him all day long. And Arsenic and Old Lace, same thing.
Yep.
I just the in it like I love movies like that where you've got the in and out of the doors and all these wacky characters, like kind of it inspired so many other movies. Like I don't think we get like movies like Noises Off if we didn't have Arsenic and Old Lace. I
Mhm.
don't think we get a lot of those, like even Clue, movies like that where you've got all this ensemble of characters running around in and out of places. I don't think if we had not gotten like popularity to movies like Arsenic and Old Lace with actors that are just so gifted like Cary
Yeah.
Grant was, that we get that type of, just quick dialogue like all the Howard Hawks movies he's in, like His Girl
Yeah.
Friday. He is so amazing. I could just watch his filmography in whole anytime. I love it.
Yeah, His Girl Friday's like watching a movie on double speed.
It is.
Where it's just like, wait, they talk this fast naturally?
Right. And they're just I can't it's a movie that I can barely even quote because it's so fast and I've seen it a dozen times, but I love every minute of it.
Yeah, Cary Grant was such a talented actor, and I the first Cary Grant film that I saw was North by Northwest, and I watched that for a cinema
Amazing.
class in high school. And I was like, "Who's this Thorndike you're looking for?" And it's just like he's just like wandering through the most absurd things, and he's way too casual about it. In a lot of points where
Right.
it's like you could be dead any minute now, and just like
Right.
suave as ever, just going through
But
the.
then he does a movie like that, and then he does like that Touch of Mink with Doris Day, where he's just like this high power executive that gets involved with this woman just because his limo driver hit a puddle and gets her dress wet, and he's like, "Hey, you got to go pay to get her dress cleaned." And the movie goes from there, and it's so ridiculous. But I'm just sad we never got to see him as James Bond because he was a legitimate contender to be the first one, but he didn't want to sign on for a multi-picture deal. And they were like, "Look, we really want someone who can do 3 of these." And he's like, I'm not interested. When
Like
I
goodbye.
got my life. Yeah, yeah. So he's like, goodbye. But could you imagine how much better the first installment, like Dr. No, could have been great with him because he's so good at being so suave, but then so cheeky, like five
Well,
seconds later.
it's very interesting because like there's very few James Bond movies that I think actually capture Ian Fleming's James Bond because like
Right? Oh, for sure.
he wasn't like the suave looking guy or
No.
anything. And he was kind of ruthless. He was very obviously a womanizer.
Oh,
And
for sure.
and it's just like once you get Sean Connery the first time around, they're just like, nope, setting a
Yeah,
tone here. And just move
exactly.
forward
Yeah.
with it.
That's
And
why it took Roger Moore like 3 movies to get people to actually want to see him do it.
well, and God, by the end, it's like 60,
Uh,
almost 60 years old. And it's just
yeah.
like it's like, man, retire. Like
Like
we
tap
did
out,
not
buddy.
we didn't
We'll find a new
need
one.
we didn't need View to a Kill.
Oh God, no. Well, we didn't need the man with the golden gun either, but I watch it more than I probably should have.
Well, I've been
Christopher
watching.
Lee, though, I
Well, that's the thing. Ian Fleming wanted his cousin Christopher Lee
right.
to be James Bond because that's who he
I
based him
would
off of because he actually killed
exactly
people in
right.
World War II because he was a
Oh my
spy.
gosh, yes. Like
Christopher
that
Lee,
guy. Oh
most
God,
interesting
just
man alive. Well, for
uh,
like almost 100 years, the most interesting man
I
alive.
know. I
So,
watched a documentary on him that blew my mind. It was like 100 facts you don't know about Christopher Lee, and I'm like, wow, I knew 3 of those going into this. This guy is amazing, like the most amazing human being ever.
yep. And that's why he overshadowed James Bond. But now, taking things back. So,
Right.
Patrice, what's your earliest memory of going to the movies?
Being traumatized by Return of the Jedi.
Oh,
I was taken way too young and it scared me so bad. I think my dad thought it was going to be a space movie with teddy bears. So, hey, it's a movie we can see
well,
together.
it was, but
Right. But you see Jabba basically eat a Muppet and I started screaming, and he had to take me out, and I didn't watch Star Wars again until the re-release when I was in high school.
Oh
That
my,
I did not give anything Star Wars a chance again until I was basically bullied by my friends to go see when they started re-releasing before the new ones came out. I was like, I really have no interest in the Star Wars stuff. And then I watched it, I was like, oh, okay. I guess if you're not a kid screaming that you think Muppets are dying, it's pretty good.
it's just
But
like
that's like literally my first memory being in a movie theater. I was like 3 and screaming. Like I still remember screaming and like, I don't want to be here. We have to go.
have the
But
children
after
stop
that,
screaming.
though, yeah, I didn't go again for a couple of years when there was a re-release of Snow White, which until I was in my 20s, I did not know that was not made in the 80s because they used to release the classics used
Yeah,
to come out every 5 years for the re-release. They bring them out of the vault. So I
that
thought like
vault.
that's the first movie I remember seeing in the theater was Snow White. And I had the book at home and I had the record that you could play along with the book. So it was really cool to be able to see that and have something at home to be able to remember what I just saw. So, and then Great Mouse Detective came out not long after I saw Snow White. And at that point, I was just like, Disney cartoons are the best thing ever.
Like, when are we getting that live action remake of the Great Mouse
Yeah.
Detective?
I would love that so much because so many amazing people have played Sherlock at this point that you could have be in there with like the Basil voice. I just because if they didn't take advantage of that, they're crazy, you
Yeah,
know? Because even in the Great Mouse Detective, you have Basil Rathbone voicing Sherlock for that 30-second clip,
yeah.
which is amazing.
And you had Vincent Price
Yeah.
playing
Oh,
Radigan.
Ratigan. Which that song. Oh, Ratigan, the world's greatest rat. And then the goodbye so soon. I would be lying if I said I don't sing that occasionally as I'm leaving the house.
You know, it was a very special thing when you would watch Disney VHS tapes and it's like coming soon out of the vault, and you're just like,
Big deal. Yes.
and now it's like Disney Plus is the vault, and it's just
Disney
all on
Plus.
there.
Yeah, I
Except it's
can't
like that,
imagine raising kids back then, like how my parents dealt with it because you see a movie in the theater and it's going to be at least a year before you see it again. And then it's
yeah,
going to be crazy expensive when you first put the deposit down on the tape to come back and pick it up when it's released. And now, if my kids liked Frozen, I see Frozen 3 months later, I get the DVD, or it's being released simultaneously and they can watch it all the time. I can't even imagine like how much harder it must have been to raise movie loving kids like us when it wasn't as accessible to get them.
well, Little Mermaid just came out on Disney Plus this week, and it's just like,
Mhm.
well, that'll be watched 50 million times by 3 kids.
Exactly.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
all
Yeah,
combined. So over and
exactly.
over and over again. So
Yep.
Disney Plus has created a monster. Uh, so
For sure. For sure.
and you know it doesn't take that long for a lot of movies. Like, it was crazy that like John Wick Chapter 4 just got its release for stars
Yeah.
this week. It's going to be coming up. That came out in March. It's like, what do you mean it took 6 months for it to
I
come out
know.
streaming somewhere?
Yep.
And most movies like 17 days, and then you could access it
I know,
somewhere.
right?
Now,
Yep.
Patrice, do you have a particular favorite genre of movies?
So I love animation in general.
Okay.
Just I love classic animation. Like hand-drawn animation to me is the most beautiful art form there is because it takes so many people that are so talented to be able to put that many layers of film and pictures and styles together to make a movie. And just the fact that we wouldn't have even had feature length animation if Disney hadn't really just bet everything on, hey, let's sink all our money and all our time into making a full length movie and people
Yeah.
will come see it. And everyone thinks you're nuts, but it works and it pays off. And how many full length cartoons come out every year now? It's a you don't think about, oh, there's only one cartoon coming out this year. It's going to be 3 years before I see the next Disney one. Like they're all the time now,
Yeah.
and that wasn't always the case. But I just love the artistry that goes into them, and I still CGI animation's fine. You can do a lot more things than you'd be able to do hand drawn, and the CRISPR and things like that. Some people are more into that, but I really love classic animation. 101 Dalmatians is one of my favorite movies of all time, and like I always say, they chose to put spots on these dogs. I know it was based on a book called 101 Dalmatians, but it's not like they couldn't have changed it. It could easily have been 101 Labrador Retrievers and saved
Yeah.
them a whole lot of time on ink and paint. It would change one plot point at the end, and if you made them yellow labs the whole time, it still would have worked. you
Yeah.
know. So, but
It's
Mark Davis is one of my favorite animators, and he's the one that designed Cruella and designed a lot of the other villains like Maleficent. So I love getting to see the art styles in animation and how they've changed and how they continue to change to be, more realistic, less realistic, and just the places you can go with animation. You can do anything. We can breathe
yeah.
underwater, we can breathe in space, we can, have a pet shark, we can have anything. So I think that animation is just so much fun. But in addition to animation, I really love period dramas and documentaries. If you can't tell by the articles I write, I love documentaries so much. I'm constantly watching. If I watch a movie, there's a good chance I've watched a documentary afterward about something from that movie.
It's
Like,
interesting because you don't meet a whole lot of people that like really watch a lot of documentaries. So I appreciate that about you because I do wind up watching a lot of
yeah.
documentaries and like the most random things about
Mhm.
anything and everything.
Oh yeah, and I get jealous when I see yours sometimes because I know I've DM'd you several times like, hey, where's this Rock Hudson documentary? I can't find this anywhere, and it's like, oh,
Couple
it's not
weeks.
really. And I'm like, come on,
That
yeah. Yeah,
one
they're
was
so
really good
random.
though.
It was so good. Oh my gosh, yeah. But you're right, they're so
HBO.
random, the things you can find them on. I
Yeah.
mean, one of my favorite ones I've ever watched was on Highlights Magazine. Like, you know, like it's just so interesting to see the different perspectives documentarians take. First off, like you have to go into a documentary kind of knowing what the voice and what the purpose of this person making it
Yeah.
is. So you can't just, oh, it's a documentary, it's true. So there is that little bit of an aspect to it because the filmmaker's got a vision and they've got a point they're trying to get across.
Yes.
But you still got to make your own decisions on what you feel the real story is here.
Mhm.
But I just love that. Like, I've watched a documentary on pencils. I've seen them on toilets. I've seen them on, every person under the sun from American history.
Yeah.
Like,
Most of the documentaries that like I own documentaries too, and a lot of them are music docs. Like that's probably the
mhm.
one that I
Oh,
lean to most. Personal
yeah.
favorite.
Oh, yes.
Like I'm a humongous Rush fan, and I could
Mhm,
watch Beyond the Lighted Stage like over and over and over again. I could
mhm.
watch Jack Black talk about how much he loves Rush over and over and over again.
Right? Oh my gosh, yes.
And I well obviously love documentaries about filmmaking and film
Oh
and
my
stuff
gosh,
like
yeah.
that. But it's endless possibility. It's interesting because there's endless possibilities with imagination that you can do with animation, and there's just so many things that you can make documentaries about and
Right.
make it about literally anything. If it's
Mhm,
semi interesting or like it's the most random thing, like I remember I first really started getting into documentaries back in 2018 with like Won't You Be My Neighbor,
mhm. Oh, that was
which
so good. Yes. Yes.
Academy, what's your problem?
Seriously, oh, it was so well done. I watched it probably 3 times back to back, like 3 days in a row when it came out. I loved oh, yeah,
And then
but the
Three
same thing,
Identical
like
Strangers was nuts. It was such a crazy story. I actually do own that one too. And like 2018 was like documentaries are really cool. And then I get mad every year at the Academy Awards when it's like they make really odd choices for
for
documentaries.
sure. Yeah.
Uh, I'm still not over my octopus teacher winning best
Yeah.
documentary.
Yeah.
Just saying. But anyway, but no, it's animation is such an interesting thing because it's such a expected thing at this point. People lost their minds earlier this year when it was Puss in Boots in December and there wasn't an
Mhm.
animated movie until
So
April.
Elemental, right?
Or
Yeah.
well, no,
It's
Super Mario Brothers came.
or Super Mario, yeah.
And
which I
like
already forgot about.
like Super Mario Brothers, big property. It's Illumination.
Hmm.
They make money. I don't
Right.
know if that would have made $1.4 billion or whatever if there literally wasn't a single animated movie for four
Right.
months.
Right. Like if there were other options, is everyone going to see Mario? Probably
And
not as many.
well, yeah, and like I enjoyed Mario. I didn't personally think like it was a great movie. It was the breeziest, easiest 90 minutes, except every time Jack Black got to say anything was absolutely amazing. Uh,
Right.
I
You
still
can
listen
talk
to
more, sir.
Peaches. It's like I still listen to Peaches now, and that better get nominated for Best Original Song because I want Jack Black in his Bowser tuxedo performing that
Oh,
at the Oscars. It has to happen.
that would be
Um,
the most amazing thing.
I want to see a battle between him and Ryan Gosling singing "I'm Just Ken," and
Yes.
see that's how you get people to watch the Oscars.
Right. If you want
Uh,
people to watch, I would watch 100% if I knew that was coming.
yeah. But like hand drawn animation, like that's why I love Cartoon Saloon so much with like Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea
Hmm.
and stuff like that because like they're still doing it and making great
Yeah.
movies with it. And then
Hmm.
it's mostly a lot of international markets still make hand drawn
That you're still
animation.
seeing the hand drawn, and they're gorgeous. I mean, I one of my favorite animated features ever is Sea Prince and Firechild, and the story's basic. It's Romeo and Juliet, but
Yeah.
it was drawn in the '80s, and when you look at the backgrounds with the moving jellyfish, and just they're so graceful, and there's so much of it going on. And to think that this was made 40 years ago with the technology they had 40 years ago, but it looks that beautiful, it just blows my mind. I mean, this whole movie is moving water and moving flames, and they're just gorgeous. They're dancing across the screen. The characters are super elegant or super cartoony, but the contrast between them was intentional, and you can see why they're drawn that way. But they're still all so gorgeous. The parent figures in the movie are the Oceanus is just the most gorgeous character I've probably ever seen on screen from that time period. He's just, the detail on him is amazing with the water dripping down when he comes out of the ocean. And I could watch that just for the visuals because like I said, it's a basic storyline,
Yeah.
but it's so beautiful to watch that I'll still turn it on. But yeah, I think that's also why, honestly, I love documentaries so much is because I got really into behind the scenes on how animation was made.
Mhm.
And back when Disney Channel first started being a bigger thing toward the later '80s, early '90s, a lot of what they would show would be behind the scenes things for upcoming releases to get you interested. Hey, look, we've got this movie coming out. Look at how we made it. Look at the people recording the audio. So I think that's really what spawned my love of documentaries was getting to see behind the scenes, little teasers from places like Disney Channel and like HBO and stuff started doing them too when they started having bigger releases. And then once you get to DVDs, you really had more special features that included that kind of thing. And now we get, every Marvel movie that comes out, you get a full length, Legends episode
Assembled.
afterward or assembled.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then each character is going to have their own 15-minute blurb beforehand too. So it is really cool though to see how the technology is changing on even things like Marvel movies.
Yeah.
We might be a little bit fatigued with them in general, but I still find them interesting. And from a production standpoint, the different things they're doing, even with Love and Thunder, that assembled was more interesting than the movie, in my opinion. But it was cool to see what they were doing with the sets and the lights to help the actors feel more like they were immersed in it and not just standing in a green screen with
Yeah.
the new way that they're projecting backgrounds and things behind them. And even just with Taika Waititi taking some of the character design from their children's artwork, I thought that was really cool because it might only mean something to 12 kids that watch it later. Like, hey, that's based off of something I drew. But
Yeah.
that's still a really cool thing to see.
Absolutely. Now, thinking about some of the people who are making all the films, do you have a particular favorite filmmaker?
So loving animation the way I do, I think it's super interesting that it took until 101 Dalmatians for there to be a single director over an entire feature-length film. And Wolfgang Ritterman was one of the original Nine Old Men at Disney.
Mhm.
He was the first one to actually do an entire film. as the director. Before that, they had, the sequence directors, and they would all just kind of, there'd be 6 or 7 people credited, and
Yeah.
they'd mash the movie together. He was the first one that actually, as a group, they decided, dude, you've got the vision, you see the big picture. Why don't you try to do this? So then he ended up doing it all the way through. I want to say just before Fox and the Hound was like the last one he worked on. So you got a good 20 years of being the lead director, which when you think about, I mean, look at the credits on an animated film from back then. There are a lot of people
Yeah.
involved and a lot of capacities to make that vision come, onto the page and off the page and onto the screen. So I think it's super interesting that we had one guy that
Yeah.
was able to see the big picture and make a cohesive story, but still have it feel fun when it needed to be fun and feel a little dark when it needed to be dark, and be able to take us through an entire adventure in cartoon. So I really like him. Other than that, I enjoy Howard Hawks.
Mhm.
Like I said before, I love his Girl Friday so much. I love the quick dialogue. I love all that kind of stuff. But they're definitely two of my favorites.
Absolutely. And you even see that today where a lot of animated films still have co-directors and stuff like that. And it's an undertaking. And
Right.
I think like you look at somebody like Hayao Miyazaki who was so like very controlling. And it might take somebody like
Hmm.
that being able to like take on this kind of experience and make it all work. And I can't even
Right.
imagine trying to move all those pieces together and make sure that it comes
Right.
cohesively together.
Well, with all those personalities, with all those styles and points of view, and trying to make a cohesive piece of art out of it.
Yeah.
That's what I find the most interesting about directing animation is you're not just working with an actor, you're working with like a different type of artist on this.
Yeah.
And this is everyone's got a very specific visual idea of what they want to do, and they might not all go together. And you can
Mhm.
kind of see that in some of the earlier Disney stuff too, where one styled character doesn't necessarily look right with another styled character. I mean, I think some of the most obvious ones are really like Black Cauldron. You've got super cartoony characters and you've got super realistic for the time characters, which
Mhm.
they still do that to an extent. But I feel like there is some bigger disparities in some of the earlier ones with character design in a few of them. But it having that cohesive, feeling to a movie that's animated, I think really does benefit having fewer people in, directing the different sequences, because you're not getting this disjointed, hey, this is a happy scene, hey, this is a dark
Yeah.
scene, hey, this is we're in danger. It works in the respect that they have people in charge of the character design over the different crews. Totally understand that because you do need them to look the same throughout the movie.
Yeah.
But I do like that they did move to having less people involved in directing the sequences and having one person with a vision for the whole movie to be able to pull it together like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, with a live action film, it's a director and a cinematographer. They're the ones setting up the visual of everything. And with animations, like each person doing their thing could potentially make it their own. And you don't want that when you're
Right.
doing
Yeah.
a feature film. Now, thinking about in front of the camera, who are some of your favorite actors?
Well, obviously, I already talked about Cary Grant,
Yeah. So,
but I also really like Emma Thompson. I
mhm,
like the way her career has evolved. I loved her in Cruella, but I've loved her ever since Sense and Sensibility is the first time
mhm,
she really got on my radar. And I've liked to see how her career has developed over the years, and the types of characters she plays aren't always, a Sense and Sensibility role. She gets to play. I love her in Cruella as the Baroness. That was
yeah.
a really great casting call, in my opinion. But I love her in the Harry Potter series, being this quirky, just
Weird.
really off the wall weirdo. Like I think she's great in everything she does.
She is an absolute delight. I love Emma Thompson. And like Love Actually is an interesting film because some of those things didn't age very well.
No.
Uh, and justice for her because that whole storyline was some BS and
Yeah.
she
I
got
mean, for
done
sure.
dirty.
And I
in
got to
that.
be honest, she's the only reason I watched that movie. I really didn't have any interest in it, but I'm like, ah, Emma Thompson's in it. I
Oh,
got to watch for her.
it's heartbreaking. Like she
Yeah,
does
you just
such great
feel for
work.
her so much.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
absolutely amazing. Like her acting in that. And like I really appreciated what she did with Good Luck. Was it Good Luck to You, Leo Grande? That film that she had come out that came out last year. And like she's this retired teacher who hires a sex worker to explore her sexuality, and like she bears all, just to let you know.
wow.
Like
Yeah,
she puts herself out there literally and emotionally, and she kills it. And her in anything just makes everything better. Absolutely.
exactly.
She's fantastic.
And she's
Um,
finally a dame.
yes, she deserves it.
Well deserved.
Now, Patrice, what's a film that you feel like you could literally watch every day?
I know Clue is definitely on that list. I know I could listen to that all day long. I definitely 101 Dalmatians is on that list, and the Swiss Family Robinsons from the 60s. I love that movie so much. That and The Parent Trap from the 60s.
Mhm.
Like those are kind of my happy place movies that I can flip on anytime. I could watch it. I could pick it up at any part in the movie and be happy with where it's going. I like what's going on, like Swiss Family Robinson. How could you not love everything about that? Them just, you go from this tragic situation where you have to, as a family, come together and fight
Yeah,
for your life, literally every day, to make a life because you don't know you're going to be rescued or if you're there forever. And they just like get on with it and get to work and come up with all these quirky things and then fight a bunch of pirates with coconuts. Like I love that. It's I love the all the like movies like that where you get to see either a montage or just like the setup to we're doing all these things. I'm cutting logs, I'm digging holes, and then where some of it's going, but you don't know everything that's going to happen when they finally get to the end and are having like the big conflict at the end. So I love movies that have all that kind of the build up to what's coming, and you get the little surprises like, oh, there's rocks exploding and shooting down the hill. Oh, those pirate alarms really did work. Like, all that kind of stuff to me is just so much fun because you don't have to think about it. I like just harmless fun that I don't have to think about because I have to think about stuff all the time. I like to turn my brain off.
I love Clue. Clue's definitely up there for me. And I feel like a lot of us have those like live action Disney movies that like struck a chord. Like I could watch Darby O'Gill and the Little People and
Oh
Bed
my gosh,
Knobs and
yes.
Broomsticks all the time. I
Yep.
actually listen to the music from Bed Knobs and Broomsticks pretty regularly
Yes.
on my Spotify. So, and
Uh,
sing along and absolutely love it.
yeah. One.
So, Patrice, I always like asking this question, kind of thinking about some other things outside of movies, but what's a film that you feel like connect to because it relates to another interest of yours?
I really enjoy writing,
Mhm,
and I like movies that feature writers in general,
mhm,
any kind of writers. Doesn't matter if they're writers for TV and movies or if they're writers for novels. I always find it interesting. They're either going to a different place to get away from it, or they're in the middle of a project, and all the different things that cause them to feel different creatively or be less creative or be stumped. So I really like Delirious with John Candy.
mhm.
He's writing for a soap opera and he gets clunked on the head and ends up in the world he's created. I think that's so funny. Just like, could you imagine if something that you wrote as an abstract piece of work, you just woke up in it? Like how crazy that would be. And then being able to manipulate it with your typewriter is so crazy. And then Bullets Over Broadway, the same thing. You've got the John Cusack character with, his art and his vision, and he's not going to change his vision. And he totally keeps changing his vision because he's got all these people to answer to and all the things that just keep going wrong. And I love any movie that features a writer to me has me from the beginning. I'm on the writer's side, no matter
Well,
how
and
crazy they get with it.
John Candy's always an absolute delight to just throw in there
Oh,
too. And speaking of Emma Thompson, like Stranger Than Fiction was something
yes.
that I watched this year and
Mhm.
was blown away by it. She's fantastic in it. It's one of my favorite things Will Ferrell has done.
Yep.
It's interesting getting inside the head of a writer and seeing that process. Now, who's a movie character that you feel like you connect with on a personal level?
I don't really have any character in particular that like I feel like, oh yeah, we're on the same page. But I do a little bit. I know it sounds a little crazy, but Agatha Christie
Mhm.
detectives to me, like I always kind of feel like a little bit on that level of I always am questioning the things I see around me. Why
Yeah.
is that like that? Why is that? Why did he just do that? When I just out in the world, I see things. I'm like, why did that person just put that there? That's really weird. Why they do that? Like I feel like I've got that questioning mind in me
Yeah.
about everything's got to have a reason. Did they just like? There's no way that was an accident. That is so intentional. So I've
Mhm.
got that little bit of like Poirot Marple kind of thing in me where it's like, oh no, you missed something here. Like check that out.
Absolutely. Are you looking forward to A Haunting in Venice?
I am. I actually really am. I'm probably one of the people that as much as it wasn't the best like iteration of the film, I still watch Death on the Nile. It's like an embarrassing guilty pleasure where even though the Peter Ustinov version is far superior, I've
Mhm.
seen the newer one probably 3 or 4 times. Even though it's got made up characters that don't belong and everything else, I still find it entertaining.
Well, I have a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun with Kenneth Branagh's films that he's made so far with them, and A Haunting in Venice looks legitimately creepy.
Yeah,
And
like,
I'm like,
it's such a departure from the other versions we've seen so far, and even his version in Death on the Nile and Orient Express, I feel like Poirot is so much darker in these. He's not like the happy David Suchet kind of version where he's just picky about his pudding and stuff,
yeah,
he just seems more I don't know, more action oriented a little, like Death on the Orient Express. When you get toward the end and he's got the gun out and everything, I'm like, this is not the Poirot we have come to know from the last 30 years. Like David Suchet has never got, he might have run around with a gun a couple of times, but it was more caricature. Like I got a gun, thanks, Captain Hastings. I'll carry this around.
yep,
Peter Ustinov same way. Like he might have got angry and used his little baritone of a voice to get the point across about how no, we're gonna figure this out. But it was never. I'm not gonna say he was like doing it. Well, he was in a threatening way, trying like we are gonna figure this out, like when Kenneth Brown is doing it. So I like that they did it different and that he's definitely got his own take on this character, and it's interesting to watch because you're not just seeing 30 years of a
yeah.
character getting rehashed again. You're getting a different interpretation, and it's fun to see where it's going even if we are getting mustache origin stories and really bad CGI crocodiles, I'm still there for it.
His mustache in these movies is something else.
It's crazy.
It's
It's a
like,
character on its own.
yeah, absolutely. Now, Patrice, what's a film that you love that you feel like would surprise people?
I'm pretty straightforward with my tastes as far as, I like things that are lighter. I don't usually go too deep with the things that I like. It's more surface level for me just because I movies are my way of turning my brain off and enjoying things so that I can, decompress from all the stuff that happens in life.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy watching true crime about horrible murders sometimes. And I don't think that's something that most people would expect me to be into. And I'm not saying like it feels wrong saying it, right? But I do, because of my love of figuring things out and liking documentaries and stuff, I do find the motivation kind of
Mhm.
interesting, even though it's so creepy and morbid. And I hate that I like them,
Mhm.
but it's not unusual for me to watch, the Staircase Mystery or Staircase Murders and things like that because Hulu is full of true crime documentaries now, so it's hard not to get a little sucked into some of them. And
Yeah.
I feel like in general, people wouldn't think I was going to watch something like that since I hate horror. I'm not really into thrillers when I don't like anything like too gory or graphic.
Mhm.
Like I'm cool with a thriller if I don't have to see much.
Mhm.
But I'm not gonna watch a slasher film. I'm not into like, that kind of thing. But I do kind of have the guilty pleasure of liking true crime murders.
Well, and you would fit right in with everybody my age and younger. because the fascination with true crime
It's
is
crazy how much content's out there now for it. Like, the amount of podcasts alone are so crazy.
well, when it gets to the point where you have a whole entire comedy on Hulu about podcasters
Right?
about murder, like
It's so great.
it's
It's
coming
crazy
full
though.
circle here. Which
100%.
oh, getting to see Steve Martin and Martin Short together again just brings
Uh,
all kinds of delight to me.
mhm. Yeah, I've been trying to catch up so bad because I love Only Murderers is so great. I love it.
Now, my last question for you, which I think you alluded to a little bit to this, but what do you love most about movies?
So, but people are physically making this art. It's still every time I watch a movie, like, and I'm sure you can tell from if you've read my reviews, I try not to go negative in any way because so many people have to work together to produce this product, and no one goes in wanting to make something bad. I mean, well, unless you're going with the Mel Brooks producer's theory. In general, people are trying to make a bad movie. These
Yet I
people
would
are
still
spending months
watch.
and years of their life, to make these. And I just think that's so interesting that, everyone that it takes to like I watch credits not because I'm not going to know the people, but I find it interesting to see how many jobs it takes to make a movie
Yeah.
and how it's changed everything from continuity to catering. They all matter to make something that we're going to sit there and enjoy for 2 hours. And the faith that people have to have in their vision to make it, getting actors to portray the vision you have in your head, like the technical aspects of making a movie are just mind-boggling to me. And I actually took TV production for a lot of years in high school and college. And the amount of jobs and the amount of technical things and how it's evolved just blow my mind. Like the amount of computers involved in making a movie now and just how far it's come. I mean, think about movies that were made in the 30s and 40s and even like the African Queen, right? They had to go to Africa to film that movie. Now it would just have been filmed in California or Atlanta on a green screen.
Yeah.
But, the fact that a lot of people had to give up months and years of their lives to make these movies back then, I think that's why I have such an appreciation for older movies, especially anything that was before, the 60s really was like the 40s through the 50s are kind of that sweet spot and where you're still getting a lot of really real locations and things like that before they started making full sets and things all the time where you're getting real backgrounds, you're getting the real, they're going to Rome, they're going to Africa, they're going to all these places to film, and what it had to take, on a personal level from so many people to uproot your life for 6 months or a year to go to another country to make this movie, and you got to hope it's going to succeed. And then how just traumatizing it must have been if it was a flop and you've spent like that much of your time and life and away from your family to do it. Like that just blows my mind even now, even though you're not seeing as many people going out. I mean, it's not like, you got Peter Jackson taking people to New Zealand for
Yeah.
years anymore. But even that, like, that's mind blowing to me. How many people had to, do that kind of thing? And I think that's just so awesome that that's something that people are willing to do and not, they're not all getting paid movie star money to do it.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that all these people go to all these places like and aren't making the same money they could have made staying home. So I just find that really interesting. And it's all stuff just to entertain. It's not like they're curing cancer or discovering things. They're literally doing this to entertain us, and that's so cool to me.
Well, and like you mentioned the producers, and I'm like, well, I'd still watch Springtime for Hitler.
Yes, exactly.
And it's one of those kinds of things where, like you mentioned, the African Queen, Clint Eastwood made a whole entire movie influenced by like the exploits of John Huston, what he
Right?
did, and he went
I
there.
know.
And and one of my favorite films, Mad Max Fury Road, they literally were in the desert
Right.
for 7 months in extreme heat, extreme conditions, probably wanted to kill each other for real
Oh
after
yeah.
a while, and had hundreds of hours of footage. And then you sit in that theater and watch those 2 hours and just are in complete amazement of like what they were able to accomplish. And that is true. A lot of films, like you have the big green screens are now like whatever dome type
Yeah.
technology that they've created with like the Mandalorian and what Disney's
Mhm.
starting to really utilize. But it's so fascinating how much effort it goes into this. And a lot of the times it's like a director gets everything dropped on them and just like, you ruined this, or like, you ruined my childhood, and
Right.
like all that kind of pressure. And
Mhm.
I always try to
But
take a step back and realize, and all I don't always accomplish this, but trying to take a step back and realize it's like, even if this was a bad movie, so many people put so much effort into making
mhm.
it and trying, and making a movie is hard.
Yeah.
And
And it's expensive, and you could have a great idea, great cast, great crew, and then you don't have the money to do that because of whatever came up. I mean, look at Jurassic Park. That was one of my favorite books, and then they make it into a movie, and it's not identical, right? So at first, but it's so amazing, right? Like you look at the technology that they were developing at the time. I mean, that could have looked those raptors could have easily looked like Jason and the Argonauts kind of stuff from the 70s, but they had faith in that technology and trying it, and it worked out so well, and it changed a lot of things, but it still had all the practical effects. I love practical effects so much. I kind of
absolutely.
hate that some of the Disney stuff is cleaning up mistakes. Like you watch the old Muppet movies and you don't see the arm rods anymore, and I kind of miss that because I like that. It's great to see the version that, oh, hey, they look like they're living in the real world, but I kind of appreciate the fact that when they don't erase it and you only notice it a couple of times, how much cooler is that when you're watching a Muppet movie, like I've got DVDs of Great Muppet Caper. You only see the strings like 3 times in that whole movie. Like, how crazy is that when they're riding
Yeah.
bikes as a group, they're jumping through stained glass windows? I mean, there's so many times, like in water, doing a water ballet, and you only see an arm rod like 1 time and you see strings maybe 3 times. Like, that to me is more impressive than if you delete those things out. Because if I only notice it those couple of times, I realize how much talent those people had to be able to pull that off with the restraints they had of not being able to erase their mistakes or erase things that could be perceived as a mistake.
Yeah.
So I really kind of miss that.
And how much effort did it take to put animal in a hot tub in like
Like,
Muppet Mayhem? And it's just like,
I
what
know.
is that?
I
And it's
that
movies
yeah.
are magic, and which is why I love the movies that made us on Netflix.
That's so great.
Such
I
a great
love I
documentary
They
series.
haven't put out any more in what, almost 2 years now, and I'm like, "Come on, guys. We really need some more because 'cause I've watched all
Absolutely.
those episodes 2 or 3 times. I
Mhm.
love them. It was so
Yeah.
fun to see, like, because they are some of the like, our all-time favorite movies, right? I mean, you've got Jurassic Park, Back to the Future, Home Alone, I think they did Nightmare Before Christmas, or that might have been another doc I watched on Disney, but,
They did a
there was
handful
an
of horror ones one year for
right, they did the
for
4 horror
Halloween.
ones,
Like I really enjoyed
and they
the Halloween one in particular.
mhm.
And it's like some guy from UCLA who made music and just like, well, made one of the most iconic horror movies of all time.
Yeah, it's so crazy,
We have a guest. Hi.
but it's yay!
She
Yeah.
occasionally will make an appearance just in time for Patrice to ask me a question as we wrap up here on Lost in the Wasteland. So, Patrice, what would you like to ask the Wasteland Reviewer and my cat Sadie?
I'm curious what you guys would like to see as, IP on the big screen because 'cause we've got so many things coming out, with Barbie and everything, Transformers. We've got a lot of IPs out there, but is there a book or a series or something from your childhood? Is there something you actually would wanna see made into a movie or even like a mini series or something, like something you'd wanna see translated into film?
So, one I'm going to mention real quick because it is happening as it appears is I'm so stoked for Mike Flanagan to make Tower Saga over at Amazon after they stole him from Netflix because Netflix was stupid and let him go. And like just imagining that coming to life is insane. But the one that always comes to mind, I loved these books when I was a kid, and it's from Suzanne Collins, who wrote Hunger Games. So it's not like this would be the first time her works got turned into a thing. It's Gregor the Overlander, and it's this whole entire series about this kid getting whisked away to this crazy fantasy world that's right below us under the
Oh, that's awesome.
and there's like 5 books, there's prophecies, there's mythology, there's all these crazy creatures and worlds. It's so cool. I love them so much as a kid. And like it's like the same kind of era of like I love Percy Jackson. I really hope this Disney Plus
Oh,
series
I know.
gets it better
Like, come
this
on,
time.
is it coming out though? It's done and we don't get to see it. That's maddening.
But Gregor the Overlander is definitely one. There's a few book series that I read when I was growing up. I'm like, I remember the Pendragon books. There's like 10 of them. I really enjoyed a lot. And just like for longest time, Captain Underpants was one of them. Like, and then they made one.
Yes.
And, and not only that, they got Weird Al Yankovic to make the theme song to it,
Like,
which was
how
the
great
most
is that?
delightful thing. I'm like, why hasn't there been a second one of Captain Underpants? Because they have a whole book series.
Right.
So I have a lot of those kinds of things from when I was a kid because I've always been an avid reader my whole life. I've had some spells where I've kind of fallen off for particular reasons, but those are definitely some of the ones that stand out to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love when they base properties off of books because you've got so much source material
Mm.
and it's fun as the audience to see what they do with it because you've got these very specific visions in your mind of, what that character should
Yeah,
be like or sound like or act like, and then to see the interpretation is so much fun to me. So that's really awesome.
absolutely. And like thinking of another one, the inheritance cycle, like Aragon, and like, please,
Yeah.
because that movie was so disappointing and bland. I'm like, ugh,
Yeah.
why? And then a
Right.
lot of this movie had like Jeremy Irons and John Malkovich in it, and you're
Like,
just like,
seriously, I wanted to like it so much. Like, you want it to be good and you wanna really love it, and you're like,
yeah.
oh.
And the Percy Jackson one had like Pierce Brosnan in it, it had Sean Bean in it, and you're just like,
Yeah,
and you just wasted.
it's like, is that where all the money and time went, was to get them?
And then that moment you realize, is that Uma Thurman as Medusa? And you're just like, where's she been?
Yeah.
And oh, but that's the thing. I feel like most people have those book series that they read as kids. And like I was a Harry Potter kid. I was there that morning, Walmart, getting my copy done 2 days. And inevitably they're gonna make a series on HBO for Max.
Mhm.
And we're gonna have to see how it goes. But
Yeah.
I feel like one bit of casting has to happen because the internet says it has to. Is we better get Adam Driver as Snape.
Oh my gosh, seriously, that is, if that's not how it goes, who else could fill those shoes? Like, he's so perfect, and I wanna see him in all the movies. All the
Yeah,
movies should have some Adam Driver.
Adam Driver just adds so much to every movie. Like
Ugh,
Kylo Ren should not have worked anywhere near as well as he did. The way that they wrote him, and just
ugh,
like nope, Adam Driver just showing up
yeah.
there. But
After I saw Marriage Story, I wanted to see all the Adam Driver all the time. He was so great.
oh man,
It's his
that
fault I
and
watched House of Gucci, but
House of Gucci was an experience.
that was,
Um,
yeah, that's the only way to describe that. It was definitely an
somebody
experience.
somebody
Not one
thought
I've
they were.
repeated.
I think somebody thought they were in the Super Mario Brothers movie. Jared Leto.
For
Uh,
sure, Jared Leto.
and
I try sometimes not to look at who's in a movie. Like, besides, you see the main, okay, I know that it's going to be Lady Gaga and Adam Driver. I did not know there was going to be heavily, heavily makeup Jared
and
Leto.
fat
And it
suit
was
Jared
one of,
Leto. Yeah.
oh my God, I was so confused. I'm like, I feel like I know who this is. Who is this? And I waited it out for a good 45 minutes before I finally looked it up. I'm like, oh, oh.
It's
That's
the
the
me,
choice.
it's the me, a papa.
It's me.
And it's just like,
I'm not the
oh my
Mario.
God. I feel like
Yeah.
by far the best Italian accent in that movie's Al Pacino, and he only gets Al Pacino out once. Like
Right?
it took 2 hours, but when he
Hmm.
screamed, I'm just like,
Yeah. Like we need more of that.
which like
Less of everything else.
I love Lady Gaga, loved her in
Mhm.
Star is Born. I
Mhm.
know people thought she should have been nominated for an Oscar for House of Gucci, but when you do a Russian accent the whole entire
Right?
time and try to be like you're an Italian person and
Mhm.
even your dialect coach is like we couldn't fix it. Just
Yeah, so we just went with this. This is what we got. It's not American. We're good. No.
even like Jeremy Irons was just like, oh, maybe not, and just he wasn't in it that much, but he's just like, no, I'm British.
Yeah.
We're just gonna
I'm
make
me. We're just gonna roll with this.
absolutely. Well, and it's funny because Adam Driver's playing Enzo Ferrari now too, and I'm just
I
like,
know.
it's like working that Italian accent.
Mhm.
So,
Like,
but
yeah,
Patrice, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming
definitely.
on and chatting movies with me.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And hopefully we'll be back at some point. You'll want to come back because I'm more than happy to have you come back.
For
But
sure.
thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.